Hello there. What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk a little bit about Armada and designing a card. Well, this could really be designing a card for just about anything, but I'm going to focus on Armada. I figured we would do a little kind of a little contest where I'll have you guys design a card and I'll pick a winner. And I think that'll be fun. The winner will get absolutely nothing. We'll just do it for fun, which is a little bit less fun. But I already have a giveaway going on right now, so I don't want to have two at the same time because then that will make my brain explode. So that wouldn't be pretty. It would be a huge mess. So let's talk about a little bit about designing a card for Armada. Like if you were to win Worlds and you were able to design a card, what are some of the things that you might do? Like what would the card be? Would it be an upgrade card? Because usually those tend to be upgrade cards rather than a whole ship. So what would you do? Would you do an upgrade card? Would it be faction specific? Would it be available to everybody? What slot would it take up? What would it be called? If you want to throw in artwork on there, if you want to do a little mock-up, a really good place to actually do this, because if you just leave it in the comments, you can totally do that. But if you want to make a little artistic mock-up and put it over in my Discord, we can upload them there. People can kind of look at them, and then we can kind of, we can even do like a vote. Like I might pick my favorite, but then we might do like a community favorite as well. I might like round it down. I'll do if you're a subscriber, you'll see sometimes I'll post something in the community tab and it'll show up, and you can, I have a poll going on there right now about Armada. So maybe I'll do something like that. We can have a community favorite, and then I'll pick my own favorite. Maybe they'll be the same. If they're the same, then I'll pick my second favorite. This way we have two more to talk about, and maybe we'll do another video talking about those. Because it's going to be a little bit more time until we get some more official Armada news, probably. So let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to walk you through one that I would create just to kind of get the ball rolling. And this is not going to be a perfect card. It's just kind of the thought process for me. So one of the things that got me thinking about cards is, first off, some things that I like, some things that might suit my play style, but also maybe absences and things that are lacking. And one of the things that I noticed as I was looking at, as more and more ships come out, almost every upgrade, there were multiple slots for it. There was a couple of exceptions. I don't think we've got a dual ion cannon yet. But another thing we don't have is we don't have a dual support team. That got me looking at support teams. And so I started to look at the support teams. First off, we have very few support teams. So maybe another support team would actually be really useful, because look how many times, like when people do take support teams, look how many times people take engine techs. That's one of the most common ones. Sometimes I see projection experts. Sometimes I see fighter coordination team, but a little bit less now after the Yavaris interaction nerf with fighter coordination team. But I don't often see engineering team. I almost never see nav team. Sometimes you see medical team because it's so cheap. It's only 1 point. But I want to talk about these a little bit, because I decided I was going to go with a support team. And also, this makes it easier, the design process behind something like this. It makes it easier to go with a support team because there's not as many ships have the support team option. So you don't have to necessarily balance it amongst every ship. And so I think in the design process, when you're trying to design a card, one of the things you need to look at is where it can go, and then balance it against every possible case scenario. I didn't do that for mine. I did like half of the work. So, we'll talk about some of the places that I think it works good and some of the places I think it works bad. So to start off, engineering or engine techs and let's talk about engineering first. Engineering and nav are the two main kind of commands that support teams tend to deal with, but this isn't always the case. So for engine techs and nav team, those are clearly nav related. They both respond after you do one of a nav command, whereas projection experts and engineering team are clearly engineering related. They kick off after you do an engineering command. In the case of nav team and engineering team, those are just straight up. They just increase the command a little bit. They just increase the command a teeny little bit, and they're about 4 and 5 points respectively. Whereas engine techs and projection experts are more expensive because they trigger off of the command and let you do something else. So we're already seeing kind of like a pattern, right? One that enhances the command, one that has an addition to the command. Like, oh, you did this command, well, now you also get to do this. Okay. Now the last two, medical team and fighter coordination team, were more recent ones that came out after the fact. Because I think the intention all along was that these two would be, cover defense and movement, and then the squadron and concentrate fire commands would be, covered with the weapons team. And that's kind of the case, but it's not as clear cut as that. Now, medical team, I'll start with that one first. It's on the top right. That one is more closely related to maybe engineering because it's defensive, although it has nothing to do with the engineering command. So that one's kind of outside of the box. It's just a team. It's just, that's it. And you have a chance to make it work, but it might do nothing. So I get that. It's actually not engineering. It's kind of a standalone thing. You don't have to be doing engineering command at all. And so, but it is kind of defensive related, so it seems like it's at least in the ballpark of engineering. Whereas fighter coordination team, well, maybe it's in the ballpark of nav because it's after you move. Both medical team and fighter coordination team don't require that you've done that command at all. They're kind of like standalone, And fighter coordination team is more along the lines of squadron, which means it's like an offensive one. Because out of your 4 commands, your nav and your engineering are a little more utility or defensive, whereas your squadron and concentrate fire are a little more offensive. Those are the ones that put dice on enemy ships. So I feel like fighter coordination team is the first offensive, and it's not really offensive because it's just moving squadrons, but it definitely lets them get moved. So while it's not doing damage itself, it is helping when you're already going to do a squadron command because it sets up the squadron command. So I figured, well, what if I had one that set up the concentrate fire command without being as clear cut as when you do a concentrate fire, add 3 extra dice, something like that. So I wanted to do something that would help the concentrate fire command, but without being as overt. So here's what I came up with. I'll show you guys. It's the munitions team, or the munition team. I thought it was munitions team. I didn't put the S in there. I don't think I could fit it with that font. So this is what I came up with. I left it at 8 because it's expensive. It might have to be more expensive, and I put a little Ugnaught in the art. And the idea is this is a guy who is tinkering around with the bullets or the rounds, the ordnance on your ship, and we're like, like almost like when they do surgery on a proton torpedo in Star Trek, right? Like, let me change the now we have high explosive rounds on our turbolasers, right? And so when attacking, if you would add a die to your attack pool, that die may be of any color. So this might sound really strong, and it may need to be tweaked a little bit because I think when the design process comes where you do get to design a card, it's not like you just get to pick it and that's it. There's always some back and forth. This might be a first draft of a card because this might need to be changed a little bit. But here's my mentality. If you do a concentrate fire, that lets you add a die of any color to your attack pool. So, but it must be a die of a color that's already present. So this one just modifies that rule a little bit and gives you the extra flexibility of it can be of any color, whether or not it's already present. So what this can let you do is this can let you, in one ideal usage is let you get a black die at long range if you've done concentrate fire. But it's a little more flexible than that because it doesn't have to just be concentrate fire. There's other things that add a die to your attack pool. All right, there's a lot. There's titles that do it. There's turbolaser things that do it. So there's a couple of there's a couple of different ways that you can add dice to your attack pool. The idea here is that this would be like 1 die. So maybe changing a die to 1 die is something that I might have to go back and forth with, ideally. Or maybe if it's going to stay like this, the point cost might just need to go up drastically. I wanted to make it expensive, and I wanted to make it that not everybody would do, so that I came up with munitions team. So I want to talk about this card a little bit because there's some other things that I had to go back and take a look at this card and say, well, is this broken? So, the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to look at the Rebel ships that could take it. So the MC-80 is a ship that doesn't seem like it's that broken with this ship. We can take it here. Generally, the MC-80, because there's also an opportunity cost. Since there's no ships that have 2 of the support teams, a lot of the ships that can take support team tend to take an engineering one for defense or engine techs for that faster movement. So, if you take this, you're sacrificing the ability to get the faster movement as well. So that was a part of the cost as well as that opportunity cost. So for the MC-80, if you do concentrate fire with this thing, you're going to get one, maybe a black die at long range. You already don't have weapons team, so you can't do ordnance experts. You don't get to reroll it. You don't have any black die crit stuff, so it's really just a chance for an extra damage. Not really that game breaking on this ship. Although there's a title that lets you add a die conditionally, but it's already a black die, so it's not really not that big of a deal for the MC80. So I don't think there's anything broken in this case. Well, let's look at other cases. What about the CR90? Both versions of the CR90, of course, can take it, but it's more of a bigger deal on the A because the A has long range. So here is a case where maybe the CR90 is better off with red dice, because one way people tend to run it is with turbo laser reroute circuits. If you're adding a black die at long range, it's not necessarily that good of a thing. So, probably a good thing, because you can roll your dice first and then spend concentrate fire. Then you can add whatever you want. Potentially it's not. I don't think it's broken here, especially adding 8 points to a ship that's supposed to be cheap. This makes this one. This would bring this one up to 62. So now you've got an expensive little ship that's still only 4 hull and can be one-shotted pretty easily. I don't know if because it's not giving you an extra die. It's just changing the color of one of your dice. I'm not sure if it's like totally broken here either. I don't think so. Now the Nebulon is one of the things I will admit that kind of led me to this whole possibility. So the Nebulon can take it. Nebulon's a ship that's already kind of fast. It doesn't need engine tech. So the Nebulon also, a lot of people think the Nebulon is kind of underpowered, maybe not that great. So here's an option where I was thinking, this would really be a nice, a really good offensive option for the Nebulons, because now all of a sudden we can, do concentrate fire on a Nebulon and really make it work, especially if I'm running Salvation, right? Because I can add a black die out of my front arc, and if I do get that crit, it's going to count as 3 damage instead of just 2, because of the black die has the crit and the hit. And that's what I was thinking. That would be really, really cool. But at that point, you're already really, ramping up your cost, because that's 7, and then the munition is 8. So you're adding 15 more points on a 51 points ship provisionally. So plus maybe other things. Plus you probably use a turbo laser or something like that. There's other there's other ways to add dice. But the intent behind the card is that it's like once per attack, or perhaps once per activation. Maybe you have to exhaust the card to do it. I wouldn't object to that either. It might be a card where you have to exhaust it to change the color. Seems reasonable. Seems like it might be a little too expensive at 8 points if it's exhaustible, or maybe not. Let's examine it further. Let's keep looking at ships. The Pelta. Now here is an example of a ship that it might be really strong on, because the Pelta can take the ordnance. So now we can get a black die crit card, like assault protons, triggering at long range. But granted, this is already a possibility because you have Sato. But the thing is, now do I even need Sato if I can put this, this munitions team on a couple of Peltas? Now maybe I can run, Leia, or maybe not Leia, maybe Dodonna with these, right? And now you're like, well, okay, that could be potentially really strong. But is it really that game breaking? Because is the Pelta really all that much of a threat in the first place? If there's a way to make Peltas significantly more expensive, because then you don't forget you're adding assault protons and an 8-point support team, and they're also going to be slow because now you can't engine tax. So now you're looking at, you've got these really slow, expensive ships that have, still only 2 dice at long range, and no ability to re-roll those dice, by the way. No ability to re-roll those dice. So you're still not guaranteed to get that crit at long range. Is that really that broken? I don't know. Here's where it becomes a little iffy. I don't think it's necessarily broken. So, especially because they have no rerolls, it's going to be very luck-based. Interesting. Let's look at Imperial ships. Now, the Architects. Now, only the command cruiser has the option to take the support team. The other version doesn't. So you'll be looking at this one. I don't see anything that's completely broken about this. It all depends on if you're considering running turbo laser reroute circuits or not. Like, a lot of times my Architects will be running with Vader. And if I'm running Vader with Architects, then it could be nice, but I don't have any black crit stuff. So it's, even if I've got rerolls, it's not really the end of the world. and that would also really increase their cost and deny them that engine techs, which they do like to use. If you're taking command cruisers, engine techs are a really, really good option. So very expensive. You lose engine techs, you lose maneuverability, and you're probably not even going to be doing nav, which these guys really like to do. So maybe you're just doing concentrate fire. Again, concentrate fire is already a command that like kind of stinks, right? In a competitive sense. I still run it a lot. But to be fair, I mean, I also lose a lot. So maybe this is going to be something that's going to make concentrate fire a little better. Okay, maybe we're on to something now. The interdictor, right? The interdictor can take it. Now, the interdictor, granted, it's already slow, but a lot of times interdictors don't take nav, or engine techs rather, because a lot of times they're running engineering commands because they're running projection experts or something like that, or taking them, trying to put themselves in a position where you shoot them and they just keep regenerating everything. So interdictor doesn't seem like it's that broken. You only got the one die, or if you go with the other version, you have 2 red dice. You probably still have a shot. Maybe you can get a blue die at long range and trigger that ion cannon crit, with heavy ion emplacements. Maybe you can get a blue crit at long range. That's not really that big of a deal because you've already got disposable capacitors for interdictors. So it's really not that big of a deal. I don't think it's broken on interdictors at all. Gladiators. This is where maybe it's broken. This is where maybe that breaks. This might break my whole card. Possibility. So a gladiator is where, now I pulled up the gladiator 2 here because the gladiator 2 also gives us the red dice on the side. Here's the problem. If I've got something to add a die to my shot, again, I'm probably only adding 1 die because I'm probably just running with a concentrate fire. I'm going to be able to take a black die at long range. Like I'll be able to take those 2 red. I can add a black to it. The gladiator can take assault protons or a black die crit effect with the ordnance, but they also have ordnance experts, for the weapons team that they can take. So now you have like the worst case scenario. Here's a ship that can take a concentrate fire. They can take a black die crit, and they can re-roll their black dice. You're looking at reliable long-range crits, which is rough, but is it broken? Because you're looking at a really expensive ship at this point, but isn't it the same price as what a Demolisher would normally cost? Like if you're running Demolisher, isn't it about the same as what a Demolisher would normally cost? Is a single black die at long range really that devastating when there's so many ships that have evade that could just wipe it out anyway? Maybe, maybe not. Especially on a ship like this where if you get that side shot, it's only 1 die. Maybe you get an accuracy there, or if it's obstructed, you can't even take it. So the chances of the red accuracy are slim. So are you going to really deny them the evade? Maybe you do. It could be a little bit broken on a Demolisher. So and so these are things we need to think about. So as we go through, and I'm going to go back to the card, so now we go back to the original card, munitions team. Maybe there's a couple of things. Maybe maybe we could increase the point cost if we think it's broken. We could go back and say, all right, well, maybe this card needs to be an exhaust. Like you can exhaust when you add a die, you may exhaust this card because again, there's other cards that you can. There's other things that will let you add dice outside of just doing a concentrate fire effect, and so as those combinations, reveal themselves, and you're like, oh well, I can add a die to each attack. Like look at Akbar, for example, right? You can add dice to every shot, right? And the way that I've written this initially, it's like, well, it's every time you would add a die, so I'm adding 2 dice with Akbar. So maybe this is an exhaustible for 1 die, all right? You may exhaust this card when one of the dice you add to your pool may be of any color. So then all of a sudden it's 1 die for 1 exhaust. But if it's that case, it might not need to cost 8 points. It might actually come down to 7 or even 6. Again, I'm not a points guy. I don't know exactly what that value would be. I think you have to weigh it against. As much as I want to say you weigh it against everything, I think you have to weigh it where is it most broken, and then make it an appropriate cost right there. And that might be with with a gladiator, or might be with a pelta, potentially. because that would give the rebels, it might almost make Sato not even, you don't need Sato anymore, because that was like Sato's thing, right? Granted, having an upgrade that does an admiral or a commander's job isn't exactly a new thing. That's happened plenty of times before. So, yeah, that's my card. It's not perfect. It's going to take some back and forth if it were real. Like, this is hypothetical. I'm not designing a card for the game. But here's an idea. It might help make Nebulons better. So that's the design process. That's everything that I've thought about when putting into this card. I think it's worth some discussion. If it was going forward, it would be a good starting point towards crafting a quality card. It may, again, and also if this seems broken, you could add extra conditions. It might be if you add this die, you cannot trigger critical effects. Maybe something as simple as that. Granted, if you're adding a black die, getting that 2 damage, a better chance of getting 2 damage is sometimes just really good on its own. Although generally I like simpler cards better. Maybe an exhaust is the way to go here. Let me know if you think it needs to be exhausted, or should it not be exhausted and maybe just increase the cost. Or maybe a different cost, like you may suffer a damage to use this ability. And then every die you add, you're taking a damage, so it turns you into a glass cannon. That could be easily exploitable, and maybe isn't the most fun way to go, especially on like Architons, adding lots of dice and just spinning shields from their other sides, but they're at long range, so the relative safety, you try to make stuff too complicated, and you're gonna, so the simpler the better, the easier it is for people to digest, the easier it is for it to be tested and reworked. But I'd like to hear what you guys have come up with. Let me know down in the comments below. Also, I'm doing a whole lightsaber giveaway thing right now. Have you seen this? Force FX lightsaber. There's details on Crabbok.com. You can win that just by becoming a subscriber and leaving a comment. I want to thank my patrons on Patreon. I want to thank all you guys that hop in Discord and we chat in there and stuff. And I'll make a little channel for Design a Card. We'll put some cards in there. If you want to do some mock-ups, you can even do it in Paint. You can just take an existing card and write over it. Erase some stuff. You can put some art in there if you want to. Make it look cool. Have some fun with it. This will be a fun little thing to hold us over while we're waiting for awesome new juicy news from FFG, whether that's going to be an article for the SSD, an actual release date. Like, I'm still anxious for when it's coming. Hopefully we'll get some more stuff. Will the Rebels get anything fun? We'll see. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and as always, have a great day.